Hi, mining community. Welcome back to another episode of the Dig Deep, the Mining Podcast. And we have another returning guest today who first appeared in November 2021. So probably 8 or 9 months ago, which was episode 189. So Alistair McIntyre, who's the CEO of Altiplano Metals, who are part of a metals group of companies focused on expanding, acquiring and developing cash flowing near-term copper, gold, and silver assets. Alistair's a geologist, has a geology and finance background with over 30 years of experience as a leader and senior advisor in the metals, banking, capital markets, physical and derivative metals trading, and gold refining space. So he's pretty well versed in the mining industry. And he's here to explain, give us an update on the company and what they've been up to. So let's welcome Alistair to the podcast. How you doing, Alistair?
I'm well, thanks, Rob. You're surviving a bit of humidity in England at the moment.
Yeah, you wouldn't really say it. You wouldn't really say the UK has much humidity, but I think this week is a little bit hot. So I've got a couple of doors closed, but the windows open, but it's not making much difference. Yeah. But anyway, we will survive. So yeah, as I alluded to, you were on the podcast last November, which was episode 189. So for those that didn't listen to it, and I appreciate if you can go back and listen to that episode after listening to this episode, why don't you just give us a brief overview of your background?
Yeah, well, thanks, Rob. From the company perspective, Altiplano, basically, as you mentioned, focuses on near-term cash flow projects. We're interested in sort of the copper, gold, silver market. We're part of the Metals Group, and Metals Group's a collective of individuals who've been involved in the market for some period of time with great levels of success and opportunity to reach into the market. So that helps in terms of our business in general, in terms of our reach. The company itself, basically, we've been focusing, as we mentioned, on cash flowing assets, but also from the point of view that investors are looking for upside in any sort of company with respect to their production profile or cash flowing profile. They want to see, growth in companies. So we also focus on exploration projects and, something of sizable scale, district plays, discovery potential. So we package that up as something a little bit different that we see, with respect to our competitors. So we look at cash flow. We can use that cash flow to generate returns, of course, but also reinvest into the company with respect to exploration projects, developing current assets, and building infrastructure. And particularly, as we've done recently at Peñón, we've built a processing facility to support our project at Peñón, which is a copper, gold, and iron project.
Why don't you even just give us an update from our last chat, which was, like I said, 8-9 months ago or so. And obviously remind us how you differ from other junior miners in the space.
Yeah, sure. And, it's been a challenging number of months, as we all know, with respect to COVID. COVID aside, we're seeing a lot of issues with respect to supply chain issues and getting labor forces mobilized and organized. And, we've been building a processing plant. In our last conversation, we perhaps around that time had just received our approval to complete or begin a construction. So, those issues aside, we were able to work through. We just recently announced a couple of weeks ago that we've commissioned a operation at El Peñón. So that facility will be a flotation and magnetic separator, and that generates the ability to produce a copper gold concentrate and separately a magnetic concentrate of iron that we basically will have a secondary income stream from. So apart from the commercial side, this mill is a very interesting project. We've basically put a lot of thought into this facility, and we've essentially become one of the first in a small scale mining space to use what we're looking at on the magnetic separation and also from a dewatering perspective. So this does two very important things from an environmental perspective. It reduces our total tails output because we capture that metal. We use a dry process in terms of our tailings output. So we don't need a conventional tailings dam. We produce a dry tail. So reduces water by 75%, very important in Chile. and we reduce our tailings output by 40-something%. So that all packaged up, we see it as important, to reduce our footprint in our mining operation. So that's one of the big things that we've looked at in terms of Peñón and at El Peñón, which is our processing plant. So I can jump on to some of our operating things, other projects, but that's a bit of a summary in terms of our last couple of months.
Yeah, obviously you mentioned about building a process plant. What are some of the supply chain issues or challenges that you have faced that you probably wouldn't have done in a different era?
Yeah, well, just things that that every country has experienced. I mean, we were fortunate there wasn't anything, I'll use the words catastrophic. And then there are industries where they did have shutdowns and couldn't move forward because the countries are shut down, industries are shut down. So Chile was very, I'll use the words entrepreneurial, kept things moving. Perhaps they did close borders, et cetera, as many countries did. But, we were able to move through in terms of getting our equipment in, organized, put it onto the plant and built. But, there's just that sort of small issues about, having labor forces being available on a 100% basis because of either somebody has an illness or there is a reorganization of schedules or people aren't available. So there was, a little bit of issue around there. Some things, had a little bit longer time through permitting. Some things had a little longer time through getting pushed through customs because all these organizations were working at 100% capacity. So it was, to be honest, Rob, was more of an aggravation than a setback. And that aggravation basically is just that sort of thing that everybody experienced during COVID. And, fortunately, we were able to get things done, perhaps a little bit behind schedule in terms of timeline. But you know what? In the big picture, I think we've done very well with respect to getting that facility to the position that we're in now.
Wonder if you then obviously tell us a little bit about the progress of your second development or second asset, Maria Luisa.
Yeah, this is part of our focus with respect to having a portfolio or a number of cash flowing, producing, revenue generating projects. And Maria Luisa is a former producer, copper, primarily of gold, primarily, and copper. About 120 kilometers north of us from La Serena, or from Peñón, I should say. And we've worked on this project for a couple of years. We previously drilled it back in 2017. It is a historical producer. It had good grades in the order of 6.9 grams per ton gold, and also about 1.9% copper. So we've looked at areas that we see as opportunity to get underground, extract material, and sell it to earn an income, and that's what we're looking at now. We've developed this decline. We're at about 300 and something meters, 310 meters of a target of say 330 meters. We see two productive types of vein structures that carry gold and copper. We've been drilling in advance to very similar to what we did at Peñón to see where our sort of grade control and understand where those mineral systems will be intersected. So we're close to that point where we can now begin using crosscuts to move into that sort of mineralized zone and getting under some of those historical workings, and then begin driving subdrifts in the two different directions along these two vein structures to again capture this material and send it out for sale.
What do you think about the sort of current market conditions and the prospect for metal prices? Obviously, everything seems to be pretty much down at the moment. How do you see that developing through the course of this year going into next year?
Well, certainly to use a sort of cliche, it's a bit of a firestorm with respect to what's happening in the broader market. We're seeing sell-off at the S&P and the NASDAQ level. Liquidity is not so much of a concern as we saw, say, in 2018, primarily 2008, where the GFC was kind of driven by liquidity issues. And we're seeing now basically it's a situation about growth. The growth prospects are showing or expected to decline, and why they expected to decline is mainly because, of course, we're seeing this growth in interest rates and growth in inflation, et cetera. But look, this is something that we've seen with respect to a little bit of flip-flop and misread of the markets. Beginning of the pandemic, if you recall, in March 2020, everybody expected the world to go into recession, and basically prices were down across the board. And how long was it within the next couple of weeks to months where there was pretty good macro stimulus and prices were inflated and all metal prices rose, equity prices rose to historical highs. And now we're seeing situations where, oh, goodness me, we were seeing a bit of inflation, and inflation pressures, puts pressures on metal prices, puts pressures on stocks. So we're seeing basically people's view that, we're now seeing that we will have a continuing protracted decline in growth and potentially go into recessions. Now, do you believe all that? It's hard to say, because I think much of the inflationary pressures are localized and part of some of the things that we saw in Chile with respect to just those supply chain issues. And it's not 100% driven by supply and demand consideration that you would normally see from a recession point of view. So the long answer to that particular question is that, I see that this will be a balance, that, sure, there are things that have created higher interest rates and higher inflationary pressures, but not to the extent that the market sees it. And so that sort of cliche of Dr. Copper, I think he may be the guy who needs to see the doctor, because I think in general that we'll see a turnaround with respect to inflationary and interest rate growth that will not necessarily meet markets' expectations. And therefore, we'll have a reset with respect to equities, bonds, and metals markets.
If investors were looking to invest in Altiplano, I wonder if you just tell the audience a little bit about yourself, and also, I suppose, the management team, because I think a lot of investors, obviously, there's certain criteria that people will look at if they're going to invest in a company, whether that's commodity, jurisdiction. And I think the management team is something that I always hear that is key to someone investing in a company. So I just wondering, you just tell us about yourself and about your management team.
Yeah, well, very important, for those investing in companies, whether it's in metals group, metals companies, or in pharmaceuticals or any industry, you need to basically ensure that who you're investing in has the talent and the expertise and the skills to be able to face and manage all the problems and be able to grow that company. And as part of Metals Group, as mentioned, collection of individuals who've been around for a long time. John Williams, as part of founder, has been involved in 25 public companies, has had numerous successes with respect to bringing value to companies and selling them to majors. The number of companies we're working on now, as an example, Benchmark it's a project in the Golden Horseshoe, BC, and that could potentially be Canada's next producer, because it's done significant work. It's kind of at PEA stage, developed close to 4 million ounces, mostly in the M&I category. So this is something that this is what investors look for, is that the management teams now focus a little bit there on Metals Group, but from my perspective in Altiplano, we also have a good team, a strong in-country team that manages our issues in terms of permitting, getting projects done, getting acquisitions. My background, as mentioned, was started out as a geologist. Worked in gold refining for a bunch of years, but spent most of my sort of middle career as in the capital markets, working for banks in Toronto, New York, Sydney, and Hong Kong. Focusing on the producers in the West and the consumers in the East. The first person basically set up gold trading in China, and did a lot of work with the Hong Kong Stock Exchange from the IPO perspective and monetizing assets out of China and into Hong Kong Exchange, and also supported them in their acquisition of the London Metals Exchange. So my background, focusing on the capital markets and technical background and support from the Metals Group side, and our group in terms of Chile and our ability to bring projects into cash flowing situations and acquiring projects and growing the company, I think is something that investors should take note of and see that we basically have had significant experiences and wins within our careers.
Yeah, I've got a couple more questions. So what's the outlook over the next sort of 6 to 12 months for the company?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we've hit some considerable milestones that essentially we've begun our operations at El Peñón. We'll benefit from that situation of being able to reduce costs from a trucking point of view and our processing, and being able to capture more of the payable metals. But Peñón is going very well. We're seeing good grades at depth. We've done drilling last year to identify that the vein structure continues along depth and primarily along strike and at depth. And we've just, as of today, put out a news release that we've extended our development to the 352 level. And from that perspective, we're showing that the project is sustainable. We're focusing on our grade control and being able to manage different phases to be able to continue operations and send our material to the El Peñón facility. So those are sort of situations that have done well. We basically also began our operations, should begin our operations very soon at Mary Louisa. And as I mentioned, this is a good gold copper project, and we expect to generate some cash from this operation soon. We're also doing a significant amount of exploration work on the project. We do see opportunity to go underground at different locations also on the project. There are a number of other, call it adits, that we've been underground and sampling and had good grades there in the upwards of sort of 8 grams of gold also. So that's something that we look at as, I'll use the words good success, but also focusing on an exploration project in the Maracunga. Maracunga is one of Chile's most identifiable gold camps. Pastillas is next to Kinross, it's next to Hochschild, it's next to Rio 2, it's next to Yamana. So this is sort of good real estate. And our early work that we've done there in terms of mapping and some earlier geochem and some previous high-level geophysics have shown some great alteration, sort of steam heated evidence on surface, some great pictures. Go to the website and look at Pastillas, a very, very interesting project in the high Andes. And so, yes, that's something that we will look to spend a bit of time on. And right now we're just in that outside of the Chilean field season, and that will reopen in October. We've basically purchased our own drill that we've been using to drill underground at Peñón. We've been using it to drill underground now at Mary Louisa, and that's something we can take to Pastillas and quickly drill. So that's kind of the company in a nutshell. But from the perspective and my background and my interests is to grow the company. So we're constantly looking at acquisitions. Maybe this is something that's a bit of a challenge in terms of the timing with respect to markets, but M&A comes at a good time when prices are depressed, and so we can look at a lot of opportunities and focusing on, again, additional cash flowing projects and providing upside with respect to good sizable discovery style exploration plays.
And as a conclusion, just wonder if there was anything else you would like to add or anything else you want to tell our audience who obviously are all around the world. Just wondering if you had any final thoughts.
No, it's always good to chat, Rob, and get an opportunity to put information out on Altiplano and have investors put a face to the CEO and management of the company as well. We basically are in very sort of challenging times, but this is the mining industry. Of course, you get a lot of volatility, you get a lot of ups and downs within the industry, but it's always generally very value focused. And from our perspective, we're seeing opportunity here to grow the business. And what's very, again, unique about our company in the sense that, look, we're not out there just drilling holes, getting some results, raising some money, going back out, drill some holes. Hopefully those results are better, raise some more money. We're actually doing things. We're a company that basically has underground operating assets that produce cash that we can use to reinvest. And that's typically looked at as a less dilutive model than having to depend on the capital markets, to ensure that you continue having your lights on. So from our point of view, we see ourselves a little bit different that way. That we can use these cash flowing assets to support our business and find something to be able to grow our company to a more sizable scale and also looking at it from the perspective of growing market cap. Got to start somewhere. And that's where I think we see that there's a good opportunity here to be a bit unique in the market to generate cash and provide our shareholders some good upside with respect to exploration.
Good to hear. Alistair, really appreciate your time again, in obviously giving us an update on the company. And wondered if our audience obviously has any questions, how they can go about contacting you or find out more information, and what social media platforms are you on?
Yeah, well, certainly, the number one thing that people can easily do is just go to our website, and you can see contact details there. Go to any news release, and you can see also contact details. We're also on Twitter and LinkedIn. Both from my perspective, personal account, I'm very active, and also our APN LinkedIn is very informative in terms of the information that we provide. And I was just recently in Chile about 3 weeks ago, so it's a good opportunity to see where we've had progress since my last visit, and say just a few months ago also. And there's some good information and some good photos and some good media that people can see what we've been up to. Again, we're a busy company. We're doing lots of things. We're not waiting for the markets to turn around so we can basically change our business plan. We're busy. And you can see that through our social media, and you can see that on our website.
Yeah, no, that's good to hear. Thank you very much again in sharing your journey. Obviously, wish you well for the future, and perhaps an update later this year or beginning part of next year be appreciated. Thank you, audience, for listening. Hope you enjoyed that episode. Again, another company, another guest that we should follow. They're doing a lot of work obviously in Chile, and I think it's of interest to follow their projects that they're getting involved in. So appreciate if you can share this episode amongst friends, family, others in the industry around the world, to share knowledge, especially around mining in Chile, and what Altiplano are doing as well. So appreciate your time. Thank you very much for listening. And until next time, happy mining.